what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports. I'm Matt Bisaccio. We got Connor Clement with us. We're going to be talking about the Red Sox and the Patriots and a little bit of golf to end the show. But Connor, what are we going to talk about first?
Well, Matt, let's kick things off with the Boston Celtics. Right now, probably the biggest storyline surrounding the Celtics is the four guys competing for Team USA in the FIBA World Championship basketball camp. That's Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker, our new all-star point guard that came to town recently. So I want to ask you, Matt, do you think that team play that they're going through right now with Team USA is going to help or hurt their chemistry moving towards the start of the season here?
I think it's a great opportunity for the four of them to be able to learn how to play together before they hit training camp at the end of September, early October. You have a guy like Kemba who's new to the fold. He's going to be the one that has the ball in his hands the majority of the time. You're going to want to be able to spend some time with a lot of your shooters and scorers, know where they like the ball, know how to work within that style of offense. They're going to be working under a great coach in Coach Popovich, who has been waiting a long time to be able to take over the reins of Team USA from Coach K. I really don't see how this is going to really hurt them at all. The only thing that could really be a pitfall is if any one of them sustains some type of an injury. But other than that, I think it's going to be really good for them going forward.
Well, with that being said, the NBA schedule was recently announced, and the Celtics are going to open things up on the road at Philadelphia. How do you like that matchup for the Boston Celtics?
I think that the Celtics are going to have a difficult time with the 76ers. Now, the Sixers lost a couple of scorers in Jimmy Butler and an outside presence in J.J. Redick, but they've gained Al Horford. They signed Tobias Harris to a long contract. Not that I think that he's anything great, but the size between Embiid and then you have Horford and then you have Boban. I just don't see how the Celtics are going to be able to really guard them, especially if you get into a playoff series. You have to see them night in, night out over the course of 5 to 7 games. I think it's going to be difficult for them. I don't necessarily see this, though, as like an Eastern Conference Finals preview. You have a team like Milwaukee who's still right there that's going to have something to say with it with their MVP and Giannis. And I think the Celtics have a long way to go. You have Kemba that's coming in. He's a brand new player to the team. It still remains to be seen whether or not they're going to be able to gel. Although all indications early on is that they're all getting along, famously, and that things are going well. But I think it's going to be difficult for them to really get to that point towards the end of the playoffs. I just don't know yet if Jaylen's going to be a player that's going to be able to take that next step into being that fringe all-star. If Jason Tatum's going to be able to fulfill his the prophecy of him being this superstar that we all think that he can be. Is Gordon going to be a better version of what we saw last year, what we saw in glimpses every once in a while? So I'd like to think that this is the finals or Eastern Conference Finals preview, but I'm not so sure just yet.
All right, next up on the docket for the Celtics on November 27th, probably one of the most penciled-in dates on the Celtics schedule thus far for Celtics fans is the return of Kyrie Irving, the newest member of the Brooklyn Nets. How do you think he'll be perceived in the Garden when he comes back on November 27th?
He is going to get showered with booze all night. Every time he touches the ball, every time he checks into the game, every time he checks out of the game, there's going to be a chorus or cacophony of boos that are going to rain on him the entire time. I can't think of a Boston sports athlete over the past 10 years that is going to receive such vitriol from his former crowd. Like most of the time when guys come back, they have like the video that's played for them. There's the standing ovation, kind of like what Isaiah Thomas got last year. But for Kyrie, no, he's going to be treated the way that he treated us out the door, which is poorly.
I can't say I agree more with you there, Matt, on his return. I think it's going to be an ugly scene for Kyrie Irving. You know how Boston sports fans are. They don't forget a lot of things. Now, with that being said, for this Celtics team, do you see a 60-win season in the fold for them this coming year?
I think that's a high number. I think once the odds on or the over-unders for the win total for the season, you're going to see something somewhere in the mid to lower 50s. You think about this team, they only won, 48, 49 games last year. So they're going to have to improve on a win total when you're taking away, although somebody like Kyrie we didn't like, he was a hell of a player. And a guy like Al, who at times we called average, was a very productive player. So you're going to be losing guys like that. Of course, you got Kemba in the fold now. You have Enes Kanter in the fold now. So those are going to help to replace some things in the way of scoring. But this team's going to have a tough time defensively, like I said before. And in an Eastern Conference that isn't stacked, but is top heavy with the 2, 3, 4 teams, I don't know if they're going to win 60 games. That seems kind of high to me. What do you think?
I would have to agree with you. I don't know if they could hit 60. I certainly think that they'll be above 50, probably in the mid-50 range. Somewhere around 55 wins, I think, is very attainable for this team. But as you mentioned before, the Eastern Conference, it's weak compared to the West. So I think the Celtics have a great shot of getting out of the East this year.
All right, we're going to go from the hardwood to the diamond. We're going to talk about the Red Sox, who are currently 7.5 games out of that second wild card spot. They played well recently, taking 2 of 3 from Cleveland. But Connor, does this team have any realistic shot of making that playoff spot?
Well, Matt, it's certainly the end of the season's closing in fast on this team. There's about 39 games left in the regular season. You said 7.5 games back of that second wild card spot, not the first one, the second one. Still battling with the Rays and the Athletics, and obviously the Indians, who I think are a half game back of the Twins for the AL Central division, but they're currently the leader in the wild card clubhouse. But yeah, I don't see it happening for this Red Sox team. Obviously, going to Cleveland, taking 2 or 3 against one of the hottest teams in baseball was good for them. It's certainly not the offense that you can point to. They're scoring over 5.5 runs a game. It's really the pitching that has been the problem. And we've mentioned this throughout our other shows of Talkin Sports. The bullpen has been pretty horrendous at times this year. The starting pitching has been so up and down. It's very inconsistent. Chris Sale, you don't know which guy you're going to get day in and day out. He can go out and have a 13 strikeout game like he did against LA, the last homestand they had, or he can go out and give up 5 to 8 runs against the Yankees like he did last time out against the Yankees. So I think, as I said, it's closing down quick. The season's come to an end quickly for this team, and they're running out of time, and they need a lot of help. They need a lot of help from the Rays and the Athletics. Hope that both those teams start to slide, and they obviously have to play their best baseball in these next 39 games if they want to have a shot at all.
Now, if we come to the end of September, they don't make the playoffs, and you've already mentioned the rotation and the bullpen being one of the main contributors to the team not playing well this season, but you take them into account as one group, then you have Cora, and then you have management. Who would you throw most of the blame on for the failure of the season?
Yeah, I mean, this is Boston. People are going to want to point fingers in one direction or the other. So I personally would shoulder most of the blame on the pitching staff. The pitching staff, like I said before, has been absolutely horrendous all around this year, minus a few good starts here or there for Chris Sale, David Price, or whatnot. Rick Porcello certainly hasn't been the same guy. Andrew Kashner, who they picked up before the deadline, he's been pretty bad in the Red Sox uniform thus far. And then you have your problems with the bullpen. So, but that all comes back to Alex Cora, and then on top of that comes back to Dave Dombrowski, who is at the head of this team. He's responsible for putting the talent on the field and making acquisitions at trade deadlines like he didn't this year. He didn't make a move for a bullpen pitcher. He didn't make a move for a starter besides Kashner, who, really wasn't that great of a move. They thought it might have panned out for him, but so far it hasn't. So I think at the end of the day, Dave Dombrowski is going to take most of the blame, and I wouldn't be shocked or surprised at all if he didn't have his job if this team doesn't make the playoffs moving forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. Dombrowski has to go. To sign Pierce and Eovaldi coming off the World Series, I know that they played well, but those were emotional moves. You can't be stuck in the moment as a general manager. It always has to be what's happening going forward. But Dombrowski, in his time with the Detroit, now with the Red Sox, he's shown that he's willing to go all in now, but to sacrifice years down the road. But it hasn't been all bad for the Red Sox this season. They're second in the league in scoring, just behind the Yankees. But with that, you have Devers and you have Bogarts, who have had incredible seasons. Does that make somebody like Betts maybe a little bit more expendable now that he's going to be warranting that $400 million contract?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who would have expected Rafael Devers to go out and play the way that he has this year? He just came off like an 8 consecutive hit streak, hit a home run for his 8th consecutive hit there against the Cleveland Indians in that third and final game in Cleveland. He's been tremendous all year. He's batting over .325. He's closing in on 30 home runs. He's gotten significantly better defensively throughout the year. We've all seen that. Obviously, that was one of the biggest concerns with him as a young prospect moving forward. And then obviously Xander Bogaerts, he's continued to be, I believe, the best shortstop in all of baseball this year. He's hit for power. He's hit for average. He hit 2 dingers in that final game out in Cleveland the other day. And his defense is, second to none at that position. So I think those 2 guys on the left side of the infield are your anchor. Obviously, the outfield with Mookie Betts, you want to be able to keep a guy like Mookie Betts, and you're going to have to pay him if you do because God knows someone else will. But I think absolutely, if those guys continue to be successful and you get a guy like J.D. Martinez back, you keep Jackie Bradley and Andrew Benintendi out in the outfield, I think, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for the ball club and their future, and you can't jeopardize the financial future of the team for one guy like Mookie Betts, who is a great player. He's the reigning MVP in the AL, but obviously he's taken a big step back this year. His numbers are nowhere near where they were last year, and we've seen that inconsistency from Mookie Betts before in his career. So I think, he's definitely expendable at this point. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the Red Sox did bring him back at a very high price.
If they bring him back, I hate to say that it's a mistake because he's a former MVP, he's a Gold Glove outfielder, the fan base loves him. He seems like somebody that could be like a real cornerstone of your franchise. Well, he is the cornerstone of your franchise, but somebody that you can build upon for years and years to come. But at that price, I think it's just going to be very difficult to bring him on and then be able to allocate money to other players to make sure that the entirety of the ball club is sustainable. I just don't know how they're going to be able to do it. But you had mentioned another name that I think is interesting in J.D. Martinez. He's, again, been incredible this year. Do you think that he's going to be able to opt in going forward, and you think he's long for the Red Sox?
Yeah, I mean, J.D. Martinez, he's one of those guys that hits one of these streaks, and he's as hot as any hitter in baseball. He's on a home run tear right now. His average is skyrocketing. He's getting on base consistently. He's doing everything that the Red Sox hope for, and certainly everything that he was doing last year. He had an incredible year last year in his first year in a Sox uniform. So I think, at the end of the day, you hope that he opts in. You hope that he stays with Boston. But he's not really making probably what he thinks he should make in the $20 million range. He's a guy that probably wants to make $30 million for his type of numbers that he's putting up. So I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if he opted out of his player deal for this coming off season and maybe tried to rework something with Boston or looked to go to another team that's going to pay him a lot more than Boston probably wants to, because I think even though we said Mookie Betts could be a long shot for Boston to re-sign, I think that will be their top priority over a guy like J.D. Martinez. So his future in a Sox uniform, I think, is to be debated.
For the Red Sox sake, they better hold on to somebody like J.D. Martinez. He's been incredibly affordable, incredibly consistent, productive, and he's somebody that doesn't make any type of noise whatsoever. He just goes out there, he does his job. He's like an extra hitting coach for the rest of the lineup. So to me, I think that it should be not priority number one, but it shouldn't fall too far after that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Matt. And another big team in the Boston market right now, and the hype is certainly building around their start of the season, is the New England Patriots. Now, they're coming off preseason Week 1 game out in Detroit where they absolutely shellacked the Lions 31-3. Obviously, you don't need any added hype to a Patriots team that is consistently a Super Bowl contender, consistently an AFC Championship appearance team. But are you kind of buying into this added hype around this team with, Gerard Mayo calling the defensive plays? Obviously, the offense looked good as well last week. Are you buying into that hype at all, Matt?
I mean, it's week 1 of the preseason. I don't really know how much we can really read into it. I mean, what I took away, I guess, the most is the Lions are still the Lions. They're still terrible. Patricia is a mental midget compared to Bill Belichick. You look at a 31-3 Week 1 preseason game. I mean, there's some things that you can take away from it. For me, one of the big things that I took away was the fact that the quarterback play was outstanding. Stidham was probably the main story coming out of it, but you took a look at what Brian Hoyer did. He was 12 of 14, a couple of touchdown passes. It was as good as I've seen him look since he's come back into the fold for the Patriots. Then you take a look at some of the running backs, or the guy Brissett, who'd had a really nice game, And then Maurice Harris had a really nice game as well. You saw the highlight catch that N'Keal Harry made as well. So there's some things to take away from it. Obviously, the defense played really well, giving up only the 3 points. So, I mean, like it's preseason week number 1 though, so I don't want to get too excited about it. All I'll say is that I'm happy that nobody got hurt, because that's the last thing that the Patriots can really afford to take on right now.
Well, you mentioned Brian Hoyer. He obviously did look great. I agree with you. That was probably as good as he's looked since he came back from the Niners to play for the Patriots. But besides Brian Hoyer, Jarrett Stidham, who kind of stood out to you, and who kind of made a big impact for the Patriots in just their first preseason game?
Yeah, I would have to say that it was definitely like a guy like Braxton Berrios. I feel like coming off of his redshirt year last year, he's going to have to be one of those under-the-radar wide receivers that steps his game up. Braxton Berrios from the wide receiver slot position, returning kicks, hopefully taking the load off of Julian Edelman so he doesn't have to do that anymore. At the end of, we're in obviously the back 9 of Edelman's career, so I don't want him to expose himself to any unnecessary hits. Another guy that also impressed me from the wide receiving core was Jacoby Myers, the former quarterback at NC State turned wide receiver. He's somebody that really impressed as well. So you're going to have these young first, second-year wide receivers elevate their game and get up to speed with a guy like Brady, so that way the offense isn't too far behind to begin the season. I think everybody anticipates, with the loss of Gronk, not having Josh Gordon there, a couple of new faces at the wide receiver position, that the offense isn't going to be great right away, but if they can just be good enough to keep up with the great defense that they have, then I think it'll be just fine.
Now that reminds me too, we've seen in years past, Bill Belichick hasn't really been a big proponent of carrying 3 QBs on the team. Outside of a few years ago when he had Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously he liked both those guys a lot. Do you see the Patriots carrying 3 this year with Brian Hoyer backing up Brady and then Stidham backing up Hoyer?
No, I don't see him carrying 3. Stidham's played well enough where they're going to keep him around. He's obviously going to stick around and be a 4th-round pick. You're not going to rid of him right away. But he'll be a practice squad guy right now. If he had a more versatile skill set where he could do something else, then possibly if he was more of like a running quarterback, kind of like the guy Hill from New Orleans, that can kind of come in and spell Brady in short yardage situations, then maybe you would carry that 3rd specialized quarterback. But I think for now, Brady, Hoyer, and then Stidham will be a practice squad guy and somebody that they won't feel bad about bringing in if something were to happen to Brady or Hoyer.
Well, speaking of Tom Brady, Matt, one of the biggest stories of Boston sports over the past week or so has been the fact that him and his wife Giselle put their Brookline home on the market, almost double for the value that it was appraised at. They put it on the market for $39 million. It was appraised at somewhere around $16 million. Is it time for Patriots fans to worry that maybe Tom Brady's starting to peed off towards the end of his career? Is this the last we're going to see of Tom Brady this coming year?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that this is the beginning of the end, like this move in particular. I mean, Tom Brady's going into his 20th year, 19th year as a starter. I mean, the end isn't that far away, whether it's the end of this year or the end of next year. I don't think anybody thinks that he's going to play 3 more full seasons. But let's think about who Tom Brady is for a second, right? He's a guy that's from California, played ball in Michigan. Now he's been here for the last 20 years. Let's think about his wife. His wife is an international supermodel. She's been all over the world. Did anybody really think that Gisele Bündchen was going to want to live in the New England area for the rest of her life? I just don't think that that's the case. I think that this is just a move that they're starting to think about the future. They're starting to think about like where their kids are going to be going to school for the next 10 to 15 years, where they're going to be living their lives post Tom's playing career. So I think this is just part of normal life. Now, it obviously comes at a time where Tom came out with some of the quotes like, it is what it is about his contract, and we're just going to play this year out and see where we are next year. So I think the fact that they all happened around each other, I think makes everyone's ears perk up, like, oh, wow, something's actually going on. But I wouldn't read into it too much. Tom was on the Greg Hill morning show the other day. He said not to read into it. So for right now, I'm not going to read into it because he said so.
Well, I was going to ask you that, Matt. You obviously don't think that this was motivated at all by the contract extension that he signed. They didn't really come out and say exactly what the extension was. They just said that the extension was going to pay him roughly $23 million for this coming season. Certainly a step above, I think, what he was going to make before this extension. I think he was somewhere in the high teen area, which for Tom Brady, let's face it, if he wanted to come out and say to the Patriots, I want $40 million a year, they would probably give it to him, considering he is the greatest of all time. He's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the game today. But you don't think that this move was money motivated at all?
As far as like the contract is concerned, Tom got a nice little bump for the 2019-2020 season. He went from, I think it was like 15, 16, now he's making 23. So the Patriots kind of appeased him in the short term. Now, the last 2 years on that deal, you can basically forget about those. That contract is going to be voided by the end of the season. So going into next season, Tom Brady is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I think that Tom wanted the freedom to be able to negotiate a new deal, retire, or go somewhere else. And the Patriots wanted to give him that flexibility because I don't think the Patriots want to be tied into a 42, 43, and 44-year-old quarterback. So I think they both win in this situation. It's a play the year out, let's see where we all are, and then we'll negotiate terms at the end of the deal. I mean, as far as like the money's concerned, look, he was vastly underpaid. He's been vastly underpaid. They gave him the bump to make him one of the top 5 or 6 highest paid quarterbacks in the league. They threw him a bone. That's nice. But I don't think Tom Brady is also the same guy that's going to sit there and try to like dig for every single last cent either. I mean, that's not the way that he's been throughout his career. And, you know, he's got his business ventures outside of the organization with the TB12 stuff. Giselle has more money than God. I just don't think that the money necessarily was the driving factor. I just think that Tom Brady wants the flexibility in the later years of his career to be able to do what he wants. Because it could be play 2 more years. It could be walk away at the end of this year. I just think that there's a lot of extenuating circumstances that are going to go into that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I do still believe, though, firmly that Brady will try his absolute best, barring that this season goes well for him, to play till he's at least 45 years, or till he's 45 years old. So that means this year, next season, and the season after that. And I really do think he'll be in a Patriot uniform for all 3. I don't think he'd ever jeopardize the team's well-being for his personal gain or personal success. I think when he realizes that he can't do it at a high level anymore, I think that's when Brady will step down. Which brings me to my next question. What's your record prediction for this team this coming season?
I looked at the schedule a little while ago, and you know, I try not to look at these things with red and blue tinted sunglasses on because, you know, I've loved the Patriots my entire life, so I try to be objective. But with that said, 13-3. The 3 losses that I'm going to give the Patriots this year, Week 9 against the Ravens, Week 12 against the Texans, and then whether it be earlier on in the season or late in the season, they're going to stub their toe against a division opponent. And I'll say this year it's going to be the Bills. So, but the reason why I'm going to pick the Texans and the Ravens is because they both have dual threat quarterbacks. And in years past, the Patriots have always had a difficult time reeling in these running quarterbacks. You talk about a Marcus Mariota last year that torched them. So I think that that's where they could have their stumbling points this year. But I'm going to go with 13-3. You heard it here first.
I like that record. I would say 12-4, just to be different from you. But I actually think they're going to go 13-3 as well. I'm not sure if they're going to lose. I think the Ravens pick is a really solid pick. They've always struggled with the Ravens. That game is in Baltimore as well, I believe. So I think that that's a good pick. I also think the Texans game is a good pick. You know, Bill O'Brien wants to beat the Patriots more than anybody. They've come close. You know, Deshaun Watson, not last year but the year before, he looked really good in an almost win in Foxborough. Granted, Brady threw a last-second touchdown to Brandon Cooks there in the corner of the end zone, which was a beautiful strike. But, yeah, I think the Texans could be a real tough competitor for the Patriots. I don't, however, think they're going to lose at home this year. I think their home schedule is tough. They play the Browns at home. They play the Chiefs at home. Obviously, they play all their divisional opponents at home. But I think their 3 losses are going to come on the road as well.
I agree. Well, we're going to finish up the show talking a little bit of golf. Patrick Reed last week won the Northern Trust, which was the first leg of the FedEx Cup. Do you think that he's going to be in the hunt this week at the BMW Championship?
Yeah, I think Patrick Reed, funny story about Patrick Reed, Matt, is he was really on the outside looking in last weekend before he won the Northern Trust. He was in serious jeopardy of missing the BMW championship altogether, which then in turn he would have missed the Tour championship. Certainly has taken a step back from where he was well over a year ago after winning the Masters. He was in serious contention for the FedEx Cup playoffs last season, but now he finds himself there again with that Northern Trust win last week. So I think, anytime a guy like Patrick Reed is in the fold, there's 70 guys in the field this week. There is no cut, so all the guys will make it to the weekend, but only the top 30 players in the FedEx Cup standings will move on to next week's Tour Championship at East Lake. So I definitely think he'll be there next week, but I don't think he'll be able to win.
Now we're going to talk about Tiger. He actually withdrew from the Northern Trust last week due to injury. Now this week, it doesn't seem like he's been playing all that well. Do you think he's going to be able to secure a spot in next week's tournament?
Well, really, last weekend was a big opportunity for him to play well, position himself nicely on the FedEx Cup leaderboard, and as you mentioned, he withdrew, so that bumped him down in the standings. I think he was 38th coming into this week at the BMW Championship, and he's starting to slip fast. Yesterday, he shot a 71, which is 1 under there at Medina Country Club outside of Chicago. I don't think he's going to be able to make enough ground up this weekend. We just looked at the leaderboard before we came on here, and I think he was 8 or 9 shots back now. He had a couple birdies early on, but he bogeyed a few holes and set him back to even on the day. So I think Tiger Woods needs a miracle at this point to get through the weekend and to move on to the Tour Championship next week, where, as we know, he won last year's event there and ended up coming in second in the FedEx Cup standings. So I don't see that same magic happening for Tiger this go around, which is really kind of a slap in the face, given that he did win the Masters this year, which gives you a whole ton of FedEx Cup points. But ever since he won the Masters, he's kind of been on a downward spiral. He missed 2 of the next 3 major cuts, which are killer to your season, and he hasn't won a tournament since winning the Masters. So I think it's looking bad for Tiger Woods.
It's been a shocking decline since he won the Masters in April. And it's really too bad for the casual golf fan like myself and other people that may not watch a lot of golf, but if Tiger's in the running, if he's right there at the top of the leaderboard going into that final round, people like me are going to tune in. So I know the golf community is sad, and I know that the TV ratings are really going to be taking a slip. But somebody who is in contention is Brooks Koepka. What do you see as his chances this week and then going forward for the rest of the FedEx Cup?
Yeah, I mean, Brooks Koepka, to me, is the best golfer in the world. He shows up at all the biggest tournaments and plays his best. Obviously, yesterday, he came in at 4 under for his first round score, which put him back, I believe, 3 shots. Now he's going to be 5 shots back. I think the leader right now is 9 under. But he tees off at 1:54 p.m. today, so I expect Brooks Koepka to have a great round today, position himself well moving into the weekend. Tomorrow, moving day, is going to be a huge day for a lot of these guys. And he's in prime position already, as we know. He's number 2 in the FedEx Cup standing. So for him to miss, really, there's absolutely no way he could miss next week's PGA Tour Championship, given that he is in second place now. He would almost probably have to come in last place this week out of 70 golfers, and I'm not even sure that would put him out of next week's Tour Championship. So I would say if you had to give me a lock pick, not to win this tournament, but to win the FedEx Cup, I would pick Brooks Koepka, because I think he's going to finish well here at Medina for the BMW, and I think next week he's probably, if not going to win the Tour Championship at East Lake, he's going to be inside the top 5, which should propel him to that FedEx Cup championship. So I like Brooks Koepka for all intents and purposes.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of the show. That was pretty fun. Hope you had some fun, Connor. I hope you guys all at home had a lot of fun watching that too. Now, if you want to watch this episode of Talkin' Sports, or go back and watch any of the archived episodes of Talking Sports, or any of the original content that we've ever made here at WMCT, make sure you go to our webpage or our website at WMCT-TV.com. Click on that video on demand tab, search sports, check it out. We want you to, all right? Appreciate you. He's Connor, I'm Matt. We'll see you next time. Take care.